week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few tight ends I would start this week. The first guy, Dalton Schultz of the Dallas Cowboys. So Schultz, he's been one of the favorite targets of Dak Prescott this season, and he's had a flurry of games, double-digit fantasy points. Week 4 versus Carolina, 6 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. Week 5 versus the Giants, 6 catches, 79 yards. And Week 6 at the New England Patriots, 5 catches, 79 yards. So the Cowboys were on bye last week, and now they got a good matchup and going to be a great game, in my opinion, at the Minnesota Vikings, where both offenses are going to go up and down the field here in a shootout. So Schultz here, he's good, in my opinion, for at least 5 catches, 60 yards, and possibly finding the end zone. And what more could you ask for double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues at the tight end position? And once again, I think Schultz does that for the 5th week in a row, and he's a must-start tight end pretty much each and every week. The next tight end, C.J. Uzomah of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now Joe Burrow's in a groove here, and he's spreading the football out to everybody on this offense. And C.J. Uzomah last week had a huge coming out party, 3 catches, 91 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So we've seen the last 3 out of 4 ball games, big games from Uzomah, with double-digit fantasy points in those 3 out of the 4. Week 6 at Detroit, he found the end zone, 3 catches, 15 yards, and a touchdown. In Week 4 versus Jacksonville, his biggest game of the season, 5 catches, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So this week, Week 8 at the Jets, I've mentioned it in other videos, pretty much all your Cincinnati Bengals are must-starts this week here versus a weak Jet defense that just gave up a 54-point burger to the mediocre offense of the New England Patriots. And I think in this one, C.J. Uzomah finds the end zone once again, and I think he'll go for 30 or 40 yards with that touchdown, and the Jets give up the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends. The next tight end's Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. So Hunter Henry, he's been solid this season here in his first year in New England with a touchdown in his last 3 ball games. And right here, he's got a matchup versus former team at the Los Angeles Chargers. And right here, he's definitely going to be motivated to show him wrong here in this ball game, in my opinion. They didn't want to give him the big money like New England did. And the Chargers give up the 2nd most fantasy points to tight ends. So right now, Mac Jones, he likes Hunter Henry a lot as a goal line and a red zone target is the big tight end Henry. In the last few games for him, Week 5 at Houston, 6 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Week 6 versus Dallas, 2 catches, 25 yards, and a touchdown. Week 7 versus the Jets, 2 catches, 23 yards, and a touchdown. And I think this week he'll get probably 30, 40 yards and definitely have a good chance of finding the end zone this week. The next tight end, Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. So Zach Ertz, he looked like a natural in this Arizona Cardinal lineup in his first game here with a big fantasy day. 3 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. And the Arizona Cardinal team 7-0. But this is going to be their toughest test yet here versus the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football. And the Packers give up the 17th most fantasy points to tight ends. So I think the Packers here, their game plan is going to try to take DeAndre Hopkins out of it. And Zach Ertz, he's still a coverage nightmare for a lot of linebackers and even safeties who play him at times, because Ertz, he still could stretch the field. He's still got some breakaway speed. We saw it last week with that long touchdown he had in that ball game versus the Houston Texans. And I think in this one, he could find the end zone once again. And this is going to be a highway shootout, in my opinion, with the Packers and the Cardinals. And Ertz, I think he goes for 50 or 60 yards in this one and finds the end zone. And the 5th and final tight end I would start this week's T.J. Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. So Hawkinson, he's been up and down this season, but the last 2 games he's got back on track here for fantasy owners. Week 6 versus Cincinnati, 8 catches, 74 yards. And Week 7 at the Rams, 6 catches, 48 yards. And now this week here in Week 8, he's got a great matchup versus the Philadelphia Eagles. They give up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. So right here last week, we saw Foster Monroe fill in for Darren Waller and have a huge fantasy day at the tight end position. And I think Hawkinson this week could have a big fantasy game with 60 or 70 yards as well and find the end zone. Because I think that ball game between Philly and Detroit, we could see a lot of points scored between the 2 teams. And right now, obviously, T.J. Hawkinson is the number 1 target in the passing game for Jared Goff and that Detroit Lion offense, with the lack of receivers making plays for that team. So I think this week will be his 3rd good week in a row here, and he's a tight end to start. So that's a few tight ends I would start here in Week 8 of the fantasy football season.